Hello and welcome to the Telegraph Studio and Business Reporter's Cybercrime Campaign, hosted by the Telegraph Online. I'm Alistair Gwynn and today I'm going to be talking to Chris Payne from Infinigate about the importance of understanding the significance of ransomware. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we hear this term, it's in the press all the time. What exactly is ransomware?
Well, let's take a typical scenario. You are an office worker in London, you travel to work in the morning, you get into your office, you log into your machine, you open a couple of emails, maybe there's some attachments in them, you open them too, you go away from your machine, you come back after a short break, and now you have no access to that machine. You can't open any files, you can't edit them, you can't create documents, you can't open any emails, you've been frozen out of your terminal. And up pops an actual menu item which says, you now need to pay us so many dollars before we will unlock this machine for you. And if you don't do that within, let's say 48 hours in this case, you will lose access to that machine permanently. That is ransomware. It's where we're taking something away from you as a criminal and we're forcing you to pay to get that back.
Is there a typical target individual or organisation for this?
Everybody's a target, everybody that can pay and everybody that has a machine. And it's effectively casting a net, very much like the way spam works. We're going to cast this out to so many millions of people, and if 2 or 3 people pay up, hey, that's a yield that we've got. So it's targeted at absolutely everyone. We see individuals being targeted, so it could just be somebody at home on their PC being targeted. We see businesses being targeted as well. There was an article that came out recently about a hospital in Hollywood, a Presbyterian hospital. They were attacked. Many of their machines actually became targets for ransomware. They were locked out of a lot of their key critical infrastructure for a long time. They couldn't perform key tasks that the hospital needed to do. They couldn't perform CT scans, for example. And they estimated that they were spending, or it was actually costing them, about $100,000 a day in not being able to perform the tasks they needed to perform.
You're talking now about organisations or individuals. So how do you actually become a victim to this?
Well, the main way that we see actual ransomware affecting people is when it's on the back of a file. So it's a classic Trojan horse scenario whereby we're going to give you something that appears to be legitimate, but it's actually got something else tagged in the back of it. We've seen a lot of social engineering being at play as well. So a lot of businesses are telling us that when it comes to the end of the quarter, end of the year, end of financial year, of course, they're actually seeing emails coming in that tell them, you've got this invoice that you need to process at the last minute. It's a huge sum. It's going to tip you over the edge of being in profit or loss, and you need to open this file now and read this PDF that we've sent you. They open the file and they become infected. So we see that type of activity quite a lot too.
You talked earlier on about the advancement of cryptography and the whole thing becoming a far, far bigger deal than ever before. Put that into some form of perspective for us. What type of amounts of money are we talking about here?
Well, if we look at it from the cyber criminals perspective, you can go onto the dark web today, and I think the lowest amount that we've seen, the actual lowest value that we've seen is $50. So you can go on and buy some ransomware for $50 that you can then distribute. If we look at the amount of ransoms that's being paid, it's generally around the $200 mark. Certainly the lowest ransom we've seen is around the $200 mark. And that means that what you get as a cyber criminal, should somebody pay up, is a yield of 300%, right? You've covered the cost of buying the software, plus you've earned a nice profit on top of that. And that beats any investment that you can make in the world today. Those statistics come from Microsoft, but if we look at some of the security vendors out there, it's actually been estimated that in the first half of 2016, we as a world of organizations have already paid $500 million in ransoms against ransomware. So that's the funding that we're providing these cyber criminals with. And of course, the projection is, if this continues, that we're going to be paying over $1 billion by the end of 2016.
Wow, I mean, that's a staggering amount. So, of course, it begs the question for all of us, how do we go about avoiding becoming a victim?
Well, I think there's a 4-step plan that everybody can take, and it's quite a simplistic plan. The first thing is, we know that the major vector and the most common way for ransomware to get into organizations and PCs is via files. So any entry or exit point in your networks for files, you should be monitoring. There should be no open access. Email, file, and web should all be monitored all of the time to make sure that everything that's coming in and out is of a legitimate type. We also need to make people aware as well, though. Users in the organization are often the pivot point for whether or not you become infected. So we need to make people aware of how to spot these types of attacks. Quite often, they're not that sophisticated. They will send you emails that have grammatical mistakes. The English is poor. Sometimes the links in the email don't work. They just appear slightly suspicious. And users can find a lot of those scenarios for you and prevent that from taking place. Now that is all preventative controls, but of course in IT security we always need to be reactive too. There's no 100% in our industry. So in terms of reaction, if you have devices in your organization today that you cannot live without, you cannot bear for them to be taken offline, and you cannot continue your day-to-day roles without these machines, like the Presbyterian Hospital, well, they should be backed up, and they should be backed up frequently, because the easiest way to recover from a cryptographic ransomware is just to restore a version that's not been encrypted. The last action point that we can have is do not pay. Never, ever pay. Because every time you pay, you're funding this industry and you're making it legitimate for the cyber criminals. For as long as we keep paying that $1 billion a year, they will continue to target.
Well, it's been fascinating finding out more about ransomware, and also the fact that there are certain things we can do to prevent ourselves from becoming victims. Chris Payne from Infinigate, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.